Israel or the territories are really now a powder keg, sort of waiting to explode at any minute, and it's happening in different cities, different towns every day, but it's happening with amazing consistency. Every few days there's a violent incident. Every few days 1 or 2 people are shot and some killed.
In the West Bank and Gaza, everything is law and order, therefore everything is permissible. Shooting, hitting, dispersal of the population by using clubs and tear gas and so on, which is worrisome.
Then they put more pressure on them so they can oppress them. But it's not possible to oppress the people because they cannot destroy what's in their minds. And that is victory or martyrdom.
Occupation is demoralizing the occupiers much more than because we've lost everything. We know we have lost everything, so we have nothing more to lose if we keep struggling.
I appreciate that they would like their own state, but I'm just not sure that the world needs another 24th Arab, Muslim, possibly radical state in an area so sensitive as this.
The solution, I believe, is by finding a national expression for Palestinians somewhere in the Arab world, in Saudi Arabia, in the Sahara, in North Syria, not where it touches or endangers the future of the State of Israel.
The uprising has been a very important event for the Palestinian as a nation-molding event. It produced internal unity. It produced cooperation. It produced a readiness of people to sacrifice themselves for each other.
You know, we're at the point of no return, and we feel that we're not going to stop until we get our rights, until we get what we want, a Palestinian state, a homeland.
King Hussein relinquishes all claim to the Israeli-occupied territories of the West Bank and Gaza as the U.S. envoy shuttles back and forth and the Palestinian uprising continues. Now, months into the rebellion that has rocked Israel and the territories, the search for a solution escalates as many feel that the situation has reached a turning point in history. Tonight, we take you inside the territories for a look at the realities that have led to the rebellion, and for a look at the young Palestinians behind it, a new generation very different from the old, ready to take history down a very different path. Who they are, what they want, and how they intend to get it, and what end for the crisis now seems possible. It is a conflict which has endured through generations, in which both Arabs and Jews have suffered a complexity of injustices, resolutions that have left much unresolved. But now the dilemma has reached a new level. Israeli soldiers now cover the old city of Jerusalem and the entire West Bank, waiting for the daily demonstrations and strikes to begin, covering a territory, an area that now functions like an armed camp under heavy military guard since the uprising, known as the Intifada, first began in December of 1987. Gaza to the south is an explosion waiting to happen on a daily basis as a hostile population faces off against a tense military guard who wait for the demonstrations called for by the uprising command to begin.
This is the Omar al-Mukhtar Street. It is the main commercial street in the Gaza Strip. Usually it is very busy in an hour like this, but as you can see, the street is almost empty. The people here are observing the instructions given by the leadership of the uprising. Today is supposed to be a full strike day. And movement to the mosque is not, as you can see, active. Fewer people are coming today to say their prayers.
Are those the soldiers down there blocking the entrance?
Well, they are monitoring the movement, but the street is empty mainly because the people are observing the strike. Of course, there are soldiers there on the roof helping monitor the situation. I don't know if you can see them up there.
The Israelis now find themselves pitted against young boys with stones, a shadowy leadership, a government unable to stop the daily outbursts, and voices of concern coming from within Israel itself and from the international community over the disintegration of the situation.
The situation in Israel has deteriorated quite significantly in the last year. From a human rights point of view, there are some particularly disturbing problems. One is the use of live ammunition, the use of fatal force, the practice, which is an ongoing practice of beatings, which seems excessive in some situations, and there are over 200 people that have been killed.
The Palestinian uprising now has been going on for months. Do you think you can stop it?
This will obviously be and is the objective of the government of Israel to do.
We don't know who are the leaders. We don't know their names or their addresses. But it is clear that the leadership consists of a combination of all the active political groups among the Palestinians. And they coordinate their activities quite successfully, concentrating their attentions on the struggle, the local struggle, in favor of having the rights of the Palestinians as an occupied people observed by Israel as an occupier. But they make it very clear that they are not aiming at reaching a political solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, because this is an area left to the PLO. And they say it very clearly, and this is not something we have to guess. We know that this is the position. So the struggle is now being conducted on two levels: the local level, which is the intifada, and the political level, which is done by the PLO. And it is clear that the leadership of the intifada recognize the PLO as their political leadership. They accept the positions taken by the PLO without any reservation. And it seems to me that this is a very clever kind of combination of the political struggle on the one hand and the local struggle, which is also political, but basically is aiming at more enabling the people to live in a way that would meet their legitimate rights under international law.
Who they are has been kept secret in many instances. What they are demonstrating against has not.
From the beginning of my life, when I began to comprehend things, I found that the so-called occupation army practiced in a manner devoid of principles or values against an unarmed people.
They are using guns, shots, they're shooting us, they're killing us, they're depriving us of our rights, they're deporting us, but we're still going to go on and on to prove to the world that we are a people and we have rights which we are going to achieve.
Fear is the least we can feel. If we want our freedom, we have to fight for it, and that's what we're doing. It's part of our daily lives, you know, it's nothing new, we're used to it now. it's like a routine to us.
Until we get our identity, until we feel that we're being treated as human beings and not just like animals, just being treated fiercely, just as if we're not human beings. We want a land of our own. We want a state for us to live in.
We want the world to see that we are not terrorists. We are not people who are doing something wrong. We want them to see that we are fighting for something that any other person would do. It's a basic right that anyone should have.
Behind the young boys with stones is now an entire population of outraged Palestinians, cutting across socioeconomic lines. Old men, young boys, older women, and young girls, ready to take to the streets, despite the jeeps and guns confronting them.
50% of those people who are demonstrating are women and girls, and they're really facing the soldiers. Those soldiers might be a bit more sensitive about this. If that's a girl, a young girl or something, maybe they think twice before shooting this girl.
Have you considered the possibility that you could be killed in these demonstrations?
Sure, I did.
And you go ahead anyhow?
It's not even, it doesn't, if you're going into the demonstration, that doesn't mean that it's only when you go to the demonstration you're going to be killed. Maybe I'm sitting inside my home, they just go into your home, and it happened, it did happen. Or maybe when you're just going in just down the street, there was some kind of trouble, they would just shoot anyone who's around. It did happen. And if you're not killed, you're being put in jail. If you're not being put in jail, you're hurt. Something is wrong with you, or you're deported. Everyone has been affected by the occupation.
What do you hope to accomplish with the intifada?
An identity, some kind of. I want a land to live in, a state for me, a state that the Palestinians themselves govern it, not people who just came from outside into the land and just governed it. It's not their land. And we're not saying that I want them to go out, or just that what they're saying is that we claim that they should go into the sea or just be kicked out. This is not what I want. I just want a land governed by me. We could live together, just side by side, but not the way they're treating us. No way.
The Intifada started in December, I think more or less at the end of a 3 years period of the Iron Fist policy, which was instituted by Mr. Rabin, our defense minister. Now, these were really very hard, very tough 3 years. And I don't think anybody knows why it was necessary to impose that policy of the Iron Fist treatment of the population. But by the end of 3 years, the population became so upset and so they felt so humiliated that the Intifada came as an inevitable reaction to that policy.
The outburst began in Gaza after a number of young Gazans were shot by Israeli soldiers. The incident triggered the beginnings of a grassroots uprising that caught the world by surprise. These young people from the refugee camps were the descendants of a conflict that started when Jewish immigrants began pouring into the predominantly Arab-populated Palestine. As their numbers increased, they called for their own Jewish state, and the British who ruled Palestine issued the Balfour Declaration. It decreed that a national homeland for the Jews should be established, but should not prejudice the civil rights of the existing Arab communities. Partition plans for two states ended in relentless debate, fighting, and a final partition that left Israel by 1948 in place of much of what had been Palestine, and hundreds of thousands of Arabs displaced in refugee camps. In 1967, the Israeli army went on to occupy Gaza and the West Bank of the Jordan River, land populated by 1.5 million Arabs living in small towns like Bethlehem, ancient villages in the hills, family farms, and old Arab cities such as Nablus and Hebron that had been the centers of old Palestine. The Arabs, stunned to find themselves under Israeli military rule, listened to the international community debate whether Israel should be forced to withdraw from these territories, while many Israelis voiced equal surprise.
The conquest of the West Bank and the Golan Heights was never decided by the Israeli government. This was a private venture of the then defense minister, Moshe Dayan, and a few generals who were very much interested in this adventure. And the Israeli government was really faced with a fait accompli. So when the occupation was accomplished, nobody really knew what to do with these territories. Nobody knew why they were occupied, and nobody knew what should be done with them. But it was clear from the very beginning that as far as the Palestinians were concerned, they saw this was an opportunity to sort of bring an end to the conflict by Israel allowing them to establish their state, their own Palestinian state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And in fact, they proposed it in a very naive, I would say, manner. They just came to the authorities and said, okay, now that we are again face to face, with the Jordanians out of the picture, the Egyptians out of the picture, let's solve the problem. This was a historical moment when we could say, okay, go ahead. But since it was a period of confusion and the government was unable to make up its mind, no decision was taken. And Golda Meir came into the office with a very clear idea that annexation of these territories was the preferred solution for Israel, and if possible, this is what Israel should be aiming at. From then on, we are faced with a very clear policy, which was common to all Israeli governments since then, that if possible, and to the extent that it is possible, these territories should be annexed and become part of Israel. And that's why we are here now, 20 years later, with the problem unresolved.
At first, people, many people, and especially the Likud, wanted annexation. They were motivated not by security considerations, but rather by the ideology.
I don't see how any person, whether Arab or of any other nationality or any other origin, finding his future here unless he fully 100% identifies with the Zionist idea. And the Zionist idea is a state for the Jewish nation. This is identifying with our tradition, with our faith, with our will to build a state for the Jews, period. And what we exactly want is a state only for the Jews. Sometimes people are afraid to say it because it sounds racism, it sounds discriminatory. Yes, if they want, they are more than welcome to identify with the Zionist idea. But if they don't want, as they express it clearly that they don't want, I don't see any reason why they should stay here. Not because we tell them don't stay here, but because they realize that it's not a place for them.
They used the security argument because it was much palatable to the world. And furthermore, I do believe that there is a real worry of security. However, it seems to me that a country can defend itself if it has bad borders. It cannot defend itself if half the population owe allegiance to the enemy, as the United States, with all its nuclear arsenal, would have been helpless had Russians lived here. And that is the analog. Now, facing the demographic problem, some deluded themselves, some Israelis are deluding themselves that perhaps there is a possibility of transfer. Now, transfer is euphemism for expulsion. But the Palestinians won't leave willingly. So a lot of violence has to be used in order to drive them out. And it seems to me that that is simply an absurdity. It's impossible.
This is one of the 26 refugee camps in the occupied territories. The refugee camps here in Gaza have made the Gaza Strip one of the poorest and most densely populated stretches of land on the face of the earth. There are now over 650,000 people living on a strip of land a mere 5 miles wide and 28 miles long. Beside them are new Israeli settlements, and beside them are deployment of armed troops so massive to quell the unrest here that they now number more than 3 times the number of soldiers sent in to occupy the zone originally in 1967. Within the camps here are people who came in 1948 thinking that they would return home in a few months. Then people who came in 1967 thinking they would return home in a short while. And now a new generation that was born in the camps, that has watched the older generation live and die in the camps, that is no longer willing to wait.
We are 25 people living in this house. We have 4 rooms. That room has 10, my brother and his children. One room has 6 people living in it. It's for me, my wife, and my kids. The other room contains all the rest of the people. My parents, my brothers and sisters, and my grandmother.
We are now 10 people. It's difficult. Where could we get them to sleep? Besides, some of them are grown up, as you can see. It's very warm in the meantime.
As far as the situation in this house, there are 6 of us in one room. Under the curfew situation, with the heat and insufficient food, it is really uncomfortable. We can't go outside to throw the trash away. If we do leave our house and we are sighted by the army, they will shoot us with their rubber bullets and throw their tear gas canisters at us. And we have many small children, and the tear gas could injure the children if they breathe it. Anything could happen. Consequently, we try to stay indoors.
Why are you staying in the camp?
First, how could we leave the camp? Don't we need money?
If you had the money, would you leave the camp?
Even then, we would not leave.
Why?
Because under the present circumstances, we cannot. The government will not allow us to go out and build as we wish. They said that you will go for a little while and then you'll be back. Now the matter took too long. We were told that it would be a matter of 1 or 2 weeks and then we would be able to return. We are considered refugees here.
While we've been talking, there's been a helicopter going overhead and machine gun fire here in the camp right next to us. What's going on?
كان في صوت هليكوبتر فوق وكمان كان في صوت طخ.
هذه الشغلات احنا تعودنا عليها.
We are getting used to such things.
24 ساعة
24 hours a day, we see the occupation army harassing the young men, and especially the children. The Air Force is always flying over the camp. There is patrolling inside the camp and on the periphery, 24 hours, day and night. The purpose of all these things is to harass the people and torture them and deny their freedom. And of course, there is no freedom. They burst into our house, the occupation army. They entered roughly and fully armed. I thought that they were engaged in battle.
كانوا مستنفرين للغاية. أنا فكرت إنهم بواجهوا مخيم أو في حرب هديك الساعة. ضربوا الأب.
They hit my father and mother and my sisters.
صحيت من النوم لقيتهم
I woke up and saw them right over me.
بكل عنف.
They roughly dragged me from my bed and did not allow me to change my sleeping clothes. I went with them. During that day, they smashed around the house and broke the windows.
The life of a dog is better than that of the camps. If anyone has a dog in America or Israel, he is providing him with a better life than in camps.
Most of the generation born under Israeli occupation are now youths under the age of 20, who total 60% of the population of the occupied territories. They are bussed daily up to the menial labor jobs, the black labor market as it is called, waiting for them in Israel proper, where they work in an atmosphere of mutual distrust.
You will leave here at 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 minutes before the curfew. You arrive there at 5:30. You will face harassment from everybody. In the bus, for example, from district to district. They inquire about your ID, where you're from, why you're there.
The morality and the demographic reality of this situation and where it is headed troubles many Israelis.
In about the year 2010, 2020, both communities will reach parity. Therefore, there'll be 50% Jews, 50% Arabs. This is worrisome because if the situation will continue, then the majority of Arabs will be disenfranchised, will have no political power and no voting power, and that must create a situation whereby it will be a master race democracy. Only Jews will be able to determine the government. The Arabs will not have any say on the life and how they want to form their own government and so on. And for me, it is a worrisome perspective. What I see happening is erosion of basic norms of human and communal behavior, of human values, which is reflected, for instance, in the complete disregard of the fact that there are now almost 10,000 Palestinians in detention camps, 2,000 detained without due process of law, without any charges.
Behind me stands Ansar II, a prison camp in the Gaza Strip. This camp, surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards, is one of nearly a dozen such camps now holding 5,000 Palestinians. Doctors, lawyers, children from the refugee camps, students, labor leaders, human rights activists, journalists, most are being held without charge or trial, some for months on end, labeled simply as security offenders. All that is necessary under current administrative Israeli law to detain them for months on end. All people. You're here at the detention center to visit your son, is that correct? What happened to him?
They took him from the house at 2 a.m. in the morning. And they accuse him of throwing stones, and they are fining him something like $700.
And how long have they kept him yet in the detention center?
They sentenced him for 5 months in jail and $700 fine.
They sentenced him for 5 months in jail, $700 fine, and he's 16 years old, and it was for throwing stones.
Yeah.
Is that right? Are the other children afraid as the result of what's happened to it, or are they continuing the work of the intifada?
اللي زيه خايفين من
خايفين طبعا والكل خايف
They are afraid and everybody is afraid.
لا
of being
فيما لو يطلع كمان في نفس الوقت احنا طيب هذا البلد مركان يجوا يدوروا على البلد هذا البلد.
They have been looking for this boy. They came twice to locate him.
Why? What did they think he had done?
They think that he is throwing stones.
And so they want to arrest him?
Yeah, they have looked for him for twice.
They would put him in jail?
يحطوه في السجن لو
Small boys this age are in jail.
All these boys.
All these boys.
All these boys.
أنت بتشتغلي؟
لا كيف شعورنا احنا اللي بنكون مثلا مغطين شعرنا.
How are we supposed to feel when we see our children beaten by the soldiers? Sometimes we are asleep and all of a sudden we see soldiers jumping over the walls to the house.
بيجي بيلاقي تلفزيون بكسره.
And they destroy the
بكسروا كله
belongings in the house.
البيت كله بتكسر. كل البيت بتكسر. كله بسحب حاله بيطلع. ولا في شغل زي الناس ولا في مصاري ولا في اي حاجه. فيش عمله نصرف ايش نعمل؟
And they are suffering from some economic problems because when they destroy their belongings, they don't have the money, they don't have income to replace that furniture. Her son, which was taken, provides for 10 children in the house.
And so what do you do now that he's gone?
وكيف عايشين الآن وهو محبوس؟ Their life is possible.
الحياة يعني ما تفهمينها. من وين الواحد بده يقضيها؟
يموتونا وانا أحياء.
They are trying to kill them while they are alive. They are squeezing. A child like this, where is he going to eat from?
بقول لهم قبل ما يتكلم عن حقوق الانسان برا يجي يطلع على ايش بعدين بقول لك النقطه الصغيره بمهدوا لشعبهم انه بده يعملوا لنا مذبحه لو احنا اللي بحلل بلاحظ انه بده يعملوا لنا مذبحه.
The jails are not only filled with these young boys, but also the intellectuals, the educated and affluent Palestinians now flooding the prisons.
The military government somehow believes that if they will put all the educated people, all the people with any capability to lead, if they will put them all behind bars, then the intifada will die out. And I went to see some of them in what is called Ansar 3 down in the desert. And it is really a concentration of some 2,000 people, the cream of the Palestinian society, writers, professors, doctors, lawyers. And the only reason they are there is that there's an assumption that if all of that class of people will be put behind bars, then somehow the intifada will die out, which of course is an unrealistic expectation.
Well, I'm a dentist, but also I'm the head of Hebron University, which is one of the 6 universities on the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip. I was arrested on the 10th of March. Why exactly, I don't know. Because on my arrest, I wasn't charged with anything. I was accused of being an active member in the Palestinian community here, and I have connections with the PLO. And because of that, I was arrested. Well, I did not have any chance to defend myself. I did not appear in court except before a judge, and I mean only for a few seconds. So he will tell me that I am under detention for the period of 6 months for the safety of the public. At 7 o'clock in the morning, we were tied up. We were blindfolded. We were put on a bus, about 150 of us. We arrived around 3 o'clock. Then the blindfolds were taken away, and we saw where we were. One of the people with us, he wanted to go to relieve himself, to go to the bathroom. And he asked and asked, and the officer said, "You will have to urinate over yourself." And the poor guy was really suffering. He was in pain. We told him he could do it, to urinate over himself and to relieve himself, because we did not want him to cry in front of an Israeli officer. And we insisted on him that to relieve himself and to wet himself is not a humiliating for him. It is a humiliating to the Israeli officer because he is not a human. Any human who treats another human like that, he should not call himself a human being. The soldiers were very tense there. We could survive, but the soldiers were getting very nervous. One day we were singing in our tent, and suddenly the soldiers started throwing stones at us to tell us to shut up. We slept on the ground. We had, 5 blankets, no pillows, no running water, only limited amount of water. We had 1 bar of soap for every 28 people, and it did not come every day. We had a disposable, a blade, razor blade, 1 for 28 people. It did not come every day. We did not have a mirror. It is really funny, you know, when you don't see your face, a thing which you do every morning, and when you go for, days without seeing your face, you wonder what you look like. And I only saw my face when I was released, and I got to my brother's house in Hebron. And I looked at my face, and I saw it was burnt from the heat of the sun, and it was, I missed my face. It's really strange. It is a horrible experience. You think in this time you will not find a nation, you will not find a human being, or let me just say, a human being who thinks he's a civilized human being will treat another human being like that. It is amazing that the mentality of people still has that kind of thinking in it, that kind of torture in it. The harassment is still there. I get phone calls every day. They say they are from the Mossad, from the Israeli Mossad. They're threatening my life. They called me and they said they are from the Shabak. I said, give me your name and your address because I don't know where the Shabak is. He said, you don't know the Shabak? I said, no. He said, I'm from the Mossad. And your return will be next. We killed Abu Jihad, and you'll be next.
You will be the next to be assassinated.
The government of Israel no longer confines itself to violent activity. It's now essentially moving to outlaw political activity with which it simply doesn't agree. If somebody is a Palestinian nationalist, if somebody takes the position that they are working to organize the Palestinian community, they have been perceived to be now and are regarded by Secretary Rabin as a threat to national security.
The idea is that you take away from the general society those who are very active on, and we have very clear information about their underground activities, whether it's inciting or whether it is actual dissemination of underground flyers or calling for people to riot or to demonstrate or to go on a strike. We try to remove these people from the general society.
There is either inadequate evidence or secret evidence which is never presented to the defendant, and therefore there's no opportunity to respond. In my judgment, from an international human rights point of view, the standard for administrative detention, the procedures, simply are inadequate.
As the number of Palestinians jailed soars, So too do measures to put pressures on those outside.
The house where the 4 families live was blown up.
They blew up your house?
نسفوا لكم البيت
كله عن بكرة
كبير.
كله عن بكرة.
What was the charge?
شو كانت التهمة؟
التهمة إلي أخو أنا واحد ميلوتوف.
They were accused of throwing
الأخو الصغير
Molotov cocktails.
من القتل قولها من القتل أطلق على ميلوتوف.
He says that his younger brother admitted the charge because he was beaten by the soldiers and he could not help but admit something he hasn't done.
والصليب الأحمر جاب لنا 4 خيام.
And the Red Cross provided the 4 families with 4 tents.
و30 واحد ساكنين في الدار.
And there are 30 people who are living in the house. لسه البيت موجود والخيام؟
كله موجود.
على الأرض هلا؟ The tents and the families and the remains of the house are still there.
إحنا أول ما ياخذونا الثلاثة. هذا غالب وهنا ماجد وغادنا.
They came and took the 3 brothers, غالب, ماجد, and Faiz. Each brother lives with his wife in a room of these rooms.
كله من العفش مكسر.
And they have their furniture, but the furniture was destroyed when they bulldozed the rooms.
So they bulldozed the house.
بالبلدوزر.
بالبلدوزر.
Did they come in and tell you and the children and the wives to stand outside? They were going to bulldoze the house?
منكم مشان تطلعوا برا مشان يهدموا البيت.
أجوا على الدار عندنا.
They came to the house.
نطوا من فوق الحيطان.
They jumped over the walls.
12 جيب بقى معهم جيش.
There were about 12 vehicles, military vehicles.
نزلوا هنا قلت لهم أنا الكبير في الدار وأي واحد بدكم إياه مساعدة أجيب لكم إياه.
They came to the house and they started talking to this man here.
الضابط قال اطلعوا أنتم كلياتكم.
The officer asked them to leave the house, all of them.
ضبوها من العرق. إذا ما أخذت أولادي.
And the mother said, I don't care anymore about the house if you took my children to jail.
And so what did the women and the children do?
شو سووا النسوان والأطفال؟
النسوان والأطفال هذا مش عارف هذا ولا هذا.
This is your baby here?
هي الكباش بتجرف انتسف قلب الغرفة.
This is
your baby here lying on the floor?
عمو لا يا عمو لا يا عمو.
قديش عمره؟
عمره.
And so you and your wife and your children live in this one room now?
شو؟
أنت وزوجتك وأولادك عايشين في هالغرفة هلا.
هذا أخوي عايش في الغرفة هذه هو ومرته وابنه.
His brother, and the wife and the child live in this room, and he and his wife and his children live in another room.
Could you show us the rest of the house that they bulldozed?
ورينا بقية البيت اللي هدموه.
Just walk us through.
So there was a room here, and they bulldozed it, and they got through to the other rooms. See, this
قول له الحمامات اتكسرت وبيت المية طافف قول له كمان. قول له لا يقولوا من سيارة الشيء يقولوا عن جيراننا. قول له حتى الآن قول له.
They don't have a bathroom, a toilet, so they use their neighbor's toilet.
Will you rebuild your house? What will you do?
يعني راح تبني بيتك من
لا ممنوع السلطات الإسرائيلية.
He's not allowed to rebuild the house without obtaining a permit from the occupation authorities.
You're not allowed to rebuild.
ممنوع.
For how long?
ممنوع بتاتا.
عارف لإمتى؟
بتاتا لمدى الحياة.
You mean it could be an indefinite length of time before the Israelis give you a permit allowing you to rebuild that you have to live like this?
يعني ممكن تكون المنع لفترة غير محدودة.
لا احنا اجل حاكم بقول ما دام احنا في ما دام احنا محتلين غزة ممنوع تبنوا.
I think that's the case. It could be for an indefinite period of time, but when the military officer came here, he told them that you will never be able to rebuild your house.
We feel that this is some sort of a signal to those who are active in these subversive activities. There is a price that you may pay. And we also hope that the families involved or those that individuals belong to will prevail with their influence on these individuals not to resort to these subversive activities.
As a matter of international law, the Geneva Conventions and in particular prohibit collective punishments. I think that there is a very serious problem in the cases, for example, of demolishing homes or putting people under town arrest where, in effect, you're punishing an entire population or community for the actions of one or two people. In a number of the cases of bulldozing or sealing of homes, there's no opportunity even for individuals to go to the courts, to go and challenge the basis for these actions, which compounds the problem.
This is Sharif, your younger brother, right? Sharif, how old are you?
قديش عمرك؟
عمري 15 سنة.
He's 15.
And what happened with your arms and your legs?
ايش اللي صار لايديك ورجليك؟
أنا تأثرت كثير لما اجوا على الحارة سألونا على واحد وأنا ما بعرفوش. قلت له ما بعرفوش نزلوا له أكثر من 10 صاروا يكسروا فيا.
The soldiers came to the neighborhood and they asked him about somebody whom he did not know, and they thought that he was not collaborating with them, so they started beating him on his arms and legs.
And then what happened? Did they take you to the hospital after they beat you?
شو صار بعدين؟ أخذوك على المستشفى بعد ما ضربوك؟
أنا لا صرت حطيت لزقات على يدي عشان أطيب وقعدت أكثر حوالي من 3 جمع ما أقدرش أحرك ولا يدي ولا رجلي ضليتني في الدار.
For 3 weeks he couldn't move his arms or legs, and he stayed in the house.
You didn't go to the hospital?
ما رحتش على المستشفى؟
لا أنا ما رحتش على المستشفى. بياخذوني إذا رحت على المستشفى بياخذوني على
عشان ياخذوا معتقلين قول له.
He didn't go to the hospital because he was afraid that he would be arrested there.
Those who have gone to the hospitals have shocked many of the European and American physicians treating them.
The first period here I was very bewildered. I just didn't believe what my eyes saw. The youngest one is 13 years, and the oldest one, he is 16 years. The youngest one, a few days ago, was beaten by the Israelis. For some reason, the soldiers broke into his home, and inside the home, they beat him up with sticks. And this is done in a very systematical way. And on this boy, we can count that he has been beaten at least 15 times. And he has a broken left arm, and he will have to have a cast on that arm for some weeks. The official casualty figures for the first 5 months of the intifada is 1,200 casualties. That is what they distributed to the world. And the real number is far in excess of 20,000. The total number of hospital beds in the Gaza territory is a little more than 900, and the total population is 650,000 people, which means that the number of hospital beds here is around 1/4 of what would be considered reasonable. People in the territory, the refugees, they have very little access to hospital treatment. We have had here at the hospital 1,100 casualties in 5 months. Then you don't need much imagination to see that the whole thing will collapse.
This patient is 14 years old. The bullet which hit this boy was from the one which explodes inside the body. When this bullet hits any organ, let's say a liver or even a bone or anything, it will fragment to small pieces. These pieces will go to anywhere in the body, making more injuries. And because of that, from that time till now, this patient is having a recurrent infection and the wound is not healed.
Has your ability to treat patients ever been interfered with?
You mean by the soldiers? Oh, many times. See, once I was going with the ambulance to a camp in order to get some injured people. And when we reached the beginning of the camp, soldiers stopped us and let us wait for about 2 hours, just doing nothing, and tell us, okay, wait, we didn't have the order to let you to pass in. And after that 2 hours, and we entered, we found most of the patients were bleeding a lot, in very bad condition, and others were taken through the mountains to other hospitals, so many times. And once also our ambulance was taken by the soldiers
and the soldiers were put in this ambulance and sent to one of the camps or the villages in order to enter it, because you see it's an Arab ambulance. And when the people sees this ambulance, so they will go to the ambulance thinking that they are coming for their help. And of course, soldiers will do their work.
And what about the checkpoints by the hospitals?
In the beginning, there was a continuous checkpoint near the hospital, delaying all the cars, even the ambulances and the cars which were carrying injured people from anywhere shooted or beaten or coming to the hospital. So we have all this delay many times by the soldiers. This 24 years old female patient, she's living in Ramallah actually. She developed a bullet injury, a rubber bullet, to her right side of the skull, which penetrated the skull from here, and the bullet reached the posterior part of the left side.
Where was she when she was hit by the bullet? What happened?
She was shot in Ramallah during a demonstration, but we didn't know, was she participating in that demonstration or passing by? Because these rubber bullets usually, from the cases which were brought to our hospital, we realized that many people were shot even if they didn't participate in the demonstration, especially rubber bullets. And this patient with a rubber bullet.
This sort of rubber made in American and put in it iron. This sort of iron.
Yeah, I see.
This sort of iron. And another sort. This another sort.
I see.
Yeah.
How frequently are you fired upon here? How often have the Israelis come in and arrested people, shot people with rubber bullets?
When we go on the street, if they show our go on the street, they shout us by this sort and this sort.
If you're just simply walking in the street?
Yes.
Just show me all these rubber bullets that you've collected. The children go out and collect these rubber bullets?
Yes, the children collected it.
Do they ever shoot them at the children?
Yeah, there is another. Every home have like this.
Every home?
Yeah. I can bring from my home and my neighbor bring from her home. Every home you can say this like this.
Are the children afraid to go out?
No.
No?
No.
Why not?
Because it is usual.
The echoes of frustration and rage can be heard beyond the jails, the camps, the hospitals, into the religious community of both Palestinian Muslims and Palestinian Christians.
For the faithful of Islam, prayers are obligatory, and it is given that all the world may be used for worship. But the Muslims in Palestine are not fulfilling their worship obligation, as God and the Prophet have wished. The Jews do not prevent prayer as such, but Islam dictates that on Fridays and religious holidays, prayers must be performed by the congregation en masse at the mosque. And this is often impossible under the current difficult circumstances of the occupation.
Many religious leaders, not formally imprisoned, are under either house arrest or territorial arrest.
We are a minority of Arab Palestinians that make up 17% of the population of Israel that is greatly discriminated against almost in every field of our life. You are not what you are, they tell you. When they define the population of Israel, they speak of it as being composed of Jews and non-Jews. When we tell them define the non-Jews, they speak of the non-Jews as Christians, Muslims, and Druze. At the most, sometimes they speak of us as Arabs and Christians, with an attempt, as I said, to de-Arabize the Arab-Christian community, which is part and parcel of the Arab nation and part and parcel of the Arab-Palestinian community. The first ban that I received restricted my movement to Israel proper, but allowed me to travel abroad. This came in February 1984. In the ban itself, they said your travel abroad may cause threat to the security of the state of Israel.
Others, such as civil rights activist Mubarak Awad, have simply been deported, despite the protest of U.S. officials who have called the deportations of over 2,000 Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza over the past 21 years a clear violation of the Geneva Convention. Could you tell us what your husband was doing and what happened to him?
Mubarak came in 1985 to establish a Center for Nonviolence. And so he encouraged the people, as they struggled against the military occupation, to think of strategies that would be in the realm of nonviolent strategies. In August of 1987, Mubarak was told, your identification card is no good. It culminated in the evening of May 5th, when just a few minutes before midnight, we heard a commotion outside. I was awakened. I got up to see that the area around our house was full of young men wearing blue jeans and tennis shoes and sweatshirts. My first thought was that there was a robbery. And I went to awaken Mubarak, saying probably the neighbors need assistance. And then in a few minutes, they were pounding at our door, shouting, Awad, we want Awad. And when we went to the door, they forced their way in. 18 men who refused to identify themselves, all of them wearing guns. They had no papers. They simply said they were going to take Mubarak away. They said, we will take him to the police station for a few moments, ask him some questions, and then he will come home. Of course, he hasn't returned home, and he's being deported from the country. That was the last time he was to see our house.
The residents of the occupied territories are in a very precarious position. They live in limbo, and we have been living for over 20 years now in this limbo. We are not considered as citizens. We're just considered as residents. If we obtain residency elsewhere or obtain another citizenship or stay outside too long, we lose all connection to this land. And while we live here, we live under this military occupation where we need licenses and permits for every little thing. Where to move around, we have to carry our identity card with us at all times.
Every Palestinian living in the West Bank and Gaza, including East Jerusalem, is given an ID card. And one of them looks like this. And the ID card says your name and where you were born, where you're living. And this is very important for the Israelis because they use that sometimes, to hold you. In other words, if they want you to do something, they take the card and they say, go paint over the slogans, bring down a flag, clean up the street, stand with your hands up on your head, bring it down. Whatever they want, they have you tied when they have this card. You don't get the card until you do what they say. Now, it's also the Israelis know the power of this card, and so whenever they line up Palestinians, stop them, want to question them, want them to do anything, the Israelis come, the soldiers, and take your ID card. And in effect, you are mobilized, you are de facto arrested. So if they want you to clean up the stones, they take your ID cards and say, we'll come back in half an hour. If the stones are still here, you won't get your ID card. Or they would say, come back to the military governor and pick up your ID card. And so you are, in a sense, you are house arrested because you can't go anywhere.
Your whole society, your whole family, your whole university, your whole community is totally under the authority and the discretion of your enemy, whose interests are totally different and opposite from your interests, and whose interests are paramount. They are what controls everything that happens. So you cannot live a normal life. You cannot hope for a regular future. You cannot develop economically. You cannot have a proper education. You cannot organize your community for philanthropic or other purposes, because for everything you need his permission. And he is standing there and he is very concerned about anything you do because it has security ramifications. And he has the full authority to stop you at any time.
It becomes a tool that the government uses. And if, God forbid, you walk around without this, you're in big trouble. Because it says where you're from, they can use that, in a sense, to make collective punishment to a whole community.
Curfews, in which an entire village, town, or area can be blocked off, and the population confined to their homes, has become a daily occurrence.
That village, Ras Karkar, which is 1,500 people, is under curfew for 5 days. Thus, the people under the curfew cannot go out their houses. They must still in their houses, eating, going to bathroom. I don't know how can they live in the house without going out for 5 days. And I think it will be for more than that. They cut us from the West Bank and Gaza. No transportation, no food here. Sometimes they cut off electricity, sometimes they cut off electricity.
For 2 months?
Yes, for 2 months.
During the curfew of Kufr Nema, one of the boys of the village stood forward to protest.
The army surrounded him, and he was about a meter from the jeep. An officer went over to him. He grabbed my brother by the shoulder. He put a dum-dum bullet to his head and wasted his brains. He died instantly. We carried him to the hospital, which they immediately made into a military zone. No one was allowed in or out. But some of the young men went and took the body out by force. We took him back to our village. While we were burying him, the army came and tried to take the body. Their attempt failed because of the resoluteness and solidarity of the young men. The news media saw the place, and there is a memorial for him. For 120 days, even till today, his brains could be seen against the wall near the old mosque in Ramallah, between that church and the mosque. Anyone and all the news media can see where the brains of a young man, 19 years old, marked the wall. He gave up his life for the intifada. We will sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice for the highest goal, which every child hopes for, and that is a Palestinian state on our own land under the leadership of the PLO, with its capital in Jerusalem.
I think that Shamir and Rabin and all the government must be brought to the court instead of the Miani as Nazis. They are really the Nazis of the 20th century.
Well, that's true. They are draconian measures, and the only difference between these measures now and the same measures before the Intifada is that now these measures are being taken on a much larger scale. But under the Iron Fist policy, deportation of people, demolition of houses, arrest of children, administrative arrest, let's say arrest without any charges, were very, very common. What we see now is merely a multiplication of the same phenomenon. More people are deported, more houses are demolished, more people are put in jail.
From beneath these measures came a new generation and a rebellion.
From the occupation, we learned to be, as a Palestinian, demand for peace to establish all over the world. We don't learn from them how to kill, how to put the people in the prison, as they said, as the Hitlers do for them, and now they do what the Hitlers do for them. They do the same thing. They bury the Palestinian people now. They shot, they kill the women, the children, the men, and they imposed the curfew. They make the areas in the under military area. No one can go out and to transfer between the cities. But we learn from the occupation something good. How is the peace, how is the freedom is very valuable for all the people in the world.
From that point, I decided to start to change this negative situation to a positive one.
It is a generation that has at once fascinated and mobilized the rest of the Palestinian population.
When you see these children, I mean, with no fear at all, they have, this generation knows the Israelis as occupiers, period. I mean, we've had the experience of knowing Jews as in Palestine. I mean, our parents were living near Jews. We had Jewish neighbors, and we saw the possibility of the coexistence between the Jewish people and the Palestinians, whether they're Christians or Muslims. I mean, being in a country where it's the cradle of the three religions, I mean, that was never a problem to us. This new generation knows the Jew as an Israeli occupier. And they've just had enough. They said, if you were able to take it for 40 years and you didn't solve the problem, well, we're not going to live for eternity under occupation. And you can just see that the fear has gone. The fear has simply gone. And then you start realizing, my goodness, we've lost everything. I mean, what else can you lose?
The old city of Jerusalem is now virtually closed, something that has happened repeatedly over the past few months as the strikes called by the new young leadership of the Palestinians has brought commerce virtually to a standstill. In a dramatic turn of events, the new young leadership of Palestinians has decided that the tactics of the old generation have not proved effective. Instead, studying how Gandhi removed the British Raj from India, they have begun a series of nonviolent strikes and protests to bring the economy to its knees, passing the messages through leaflets, radio messages, old women, and little boys. Focusing on the fact that the West Bank and Gaza buy $1 billion worth of goods annually from Israel, and that Israel receives a net income of $200 million a year from taxes on the territories, the leadership of the uprising called for strikes and boycotts.
This is the voice of Al-Quds Radio, Radio Jerusalem, broadcasting for the liberation of land and man. Appeal, appeal, appeal to our merchants and technicians. In compliance with the programs of the uprising and the comprehensive popular revolt, let us announce it loud and clear. No to all forms of taxes. To our people, in order to produce our goals from the uprising, boycott Zionist products. Keep the same arrangement for opening shops between 2 to 3 hours daily, as agreed to in every locality. Our productive factories have to work at 4 with all the workers. Shops, etc. will open from the morning till 1 in the afternoon, except on full strike days.
Yes.
How do the merchants know when to go on strike, when the shops are supposed to close?
We're supposed to close every day when the intifada, the head of the intifada said that we have to close by a piece of paper. They sent it to all of the people here to close at 11 o'clock. It's an economic movement. So we start this because we saw that no one behind us, United States, Russia, and all the Arab countries are, no one support us in our fighting against Israel. Okay, we want our rights, we want to stay in our democratic state. That's what we want. We are not fighting by weapons. We are fighting by clothing, okay? by asking for what we want, for our rights. That's what we want. We are against this kind of things that the Israelis did against us here in West Bank.
The police, the army, the soldiers.
You know, in 21 years of occupation, every single attempt to form a Palestinian leadership has been crushed by the Israelis. So, from the lessons of 21 years, Palestinians learned to look for ways of avoiding the Israelis. One way that they have discovered was that the main leaders of the Unified Command are people that don't have a political record with the Israelis. In other words, they are people who have not been imprisoned, and so in what we call, they have not been burnt. They're not known by the Israelis. And therefore, the Israelis, most of their intelligence work is based on previous records. So if you've ever been imprisoned, you're more likely to be checked and rechecked again. But if you've never been imprisoned, the Israelis don't have a clue as to who you are among 1.5 million Palestinians. The Unified Command is not made up simply by individuals, but by groupings. You know, many people are supporters of Fatah, and at any moment, any of them could become leaders or members or representatives in the Unified Command. And we've had occasions in which representatives of the Unified Command have been arrested by the Israelis, questioned, and sometimes released without the Israelis knowing that they have caught the big fish, if you will. And so there is a situation because these people are very strong-willed people that would not confess under pressure. And as long as they don't have a previous record, and that's a very important thing, they can get away with it. The Palestinians have had a lot of creativity. For example, a lot of the meetings that were taking place for the Unified Command have been taking place inside Israel, in Tel Aviv, in other cities in Israel, where the Israelis have no planned intelligence. You know, here's 5 or 6 Palestinians meeting in a hotel or in a room or in a house in Tel Aviv or in Haifa or Netanya. Who knows that they are members of the Unified Command and so on?
How do you know what to do? Where do you get your instructions from?
ضرب أو مناسبة. هسه كيف إحنا بنعرف الناس العاديين إنه فيها.
The confrontation against the Israeli army is as follows.
هسه إما بكون عن طريق سفرات.
During a strike, for example,
بتكون السفرات طبعاً معروفة لناس معينين.
how do we, the ordinary people,
عدة سفرات بتكون ترمز لشغلة.
know that in such and such an hour
بتكون هذه
an event will take place?
على أثرها.
It can be through whistles. And these whistles are recognized by certain individuals. Several whistles will mean one thing. One whistle means something else. They are given from the rooftops. In response, the young people will gather. Each group will have its tasks, such as ambushing the opposition, and so forth. Another way of communicating is through a megaphone, which will be carried by a young man who is wearing specific clothes. Israeli intelligence cannot figure out the attire, so the people know who the real leader is. Through the megaphone, he starts to muster the populace and explain developments. We trust this young man because of his clothing. Another matter is the demonstration. Of course, we are not on equal ground with the Israelis, but we resist them with our will. The demonstration could be as follows. In the beginning, there will be children luring the Israeli Defense Forces into the camp. The moment they enter, the young people will act according to plan. For example, putting up blockades or spiked planks in the road. When a jeep chases the young men, it will run over the spikes, get flat tires, and as a result, be unable to proceed. Then the young men will start to attack it from all directions. If any young man is chased, the entire camp will assist him by opening the doors of the houses. The women will interpose themselves between him and the army to stop the army from its aggression against him. They will open the doors from house to house, and you know the situation in the camp. All the houses are crowded right next to each other. That helps the man escape.
One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. The Israelis accuse the Palestinians of employing violence, and sometimes they use the term terrorism to describe what they do in the process of fighting for their rights. The Israelis themselves use the same means, the same tactics. They were engaged in violence and terrorism. For the Jewish underground organizations, the Haganah, the Ergon, who were involved in the blowing up of the King David Hotel, for instance, where scores of people were killed, and who also committed massacres against innocent Palestinian villages in Deir Yassin and a few other Palestinian villages. In spite of the fact that the Palestinians recall these incidents, today they are willing to forget and forgive. By the same token, we expect the Israelis to extend the same treatment to the Palestinians and stop using the PLO's alleged dark and bloody history as an obstacle in the way of recognizing the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. I think it is time for the Israelis to demonstrate a very responsible position and come out to the world and say it's about time to end that history of conflict with our Arab neighbors and the Palestinians, and we do recognize the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination and their right to establish their own state.
It seems to me that there has been a change in the Palestinian position. In the past, they claimed for the destruction of the state of Israel. However, a conflict is a learning process or ripening process. People slowly understand what they can do, they can achieve. And many Palestinians now understand that if the conflict goes on, the future will be calamitous for the Jews and for themselves.
Entire villages, such as Kufr Nema, politicized and traumatized by events, are now striving to set up their own totally self-sufficient communities, much as the kibbutzes were structured when the early Jewish settlers in Palestine sought to remove the domination of the British mandate.
We try to be self-sufficient. We bought the 3 cows here for the village. We get milk for small children. Then we have chickens in some farms in the village. Sheep also growing vegetables, growing some fruit, because we are in this village, we have little for water. We have wells. We are forbidden to take water, to be supplied from water because of the Israeli government.
Women with financial means in the West Bank have begun setting up grassroots relief organizations to send food into the camps under curfew, to make clothes and blankets for the Palestinians in jail and for the people in camps, in an effort to help them become independent of the Israelis, and to run orphanages for those whose families in the camps are too poor to care for them, and those who have become orphans as a result of the intifada. Women who feel their own lives may have passed, but are worried, as are psychiatrists and educators, about the scars all of this is leaving on their children.
I think this is a very dangerous situation for our children. This is not helpful for peace. We want our children to grow in security. We want them to grow in a normal, sane atmosphere. We try to teach our children not to hate. It's not easy. I mean, not that we succeed, but we try. We try very hard.
My name is Awida. I am 7 years old. My father was killed by the Israelis in front of our house during the month of Ramadan. He was standing in front of our house calling my brothers into the house. And the soldiers thought that he was telling them to attack them, so they shot him in the heart, 3 bullets.
They need a respected family. They need a father, a mother, especially a respected one, a respected father. Why I'm telling that? Because if an adolescent is seeing his father, for him it's, you know, the family romance that every adolescent is making in his head all the day, dreams or having of his father as a hero or as somebody interesting. When he sees him humiliated, when he sees him beaten by the occupation, when he sees him cleaning streets, forced to do that, when he sees his father, that image that he's looking, that's a great frustration. You see, even the person who founded the theories of psychoanalysis, when he talked about his father, once he said, and he was 45 years old, he said, the most important thing that marked me in my life is to see my father, he was Jewish, he was Freud, to see his father, Jacob, in the street, and then a Catholic coming, taking his hat and throwing it down and telling him, shit, just take up your hat and go home. So for Freud, he accompanied his father, and when he saw that, it was shocking for him.
I think that it's also something that the Israelis must be very, very concerned about. What this conflict is doing to their own youth. The young men, the 18, 19-year-old men who are coming into the territories and who hold those guns. It's a tragedy what is occurring on both sides.
The fact that it's their own sons and their own government that is in charge of that thing is for them meaningless. So they are now developing a double standard or a dual approach to the territories, separating them from Israel proper. But of course this is only an invasion, because what happened in the territories definitely is changing the character, if you want, the soul of Israel as such.
The Palestinians have never said yes to any political compromise which was suggested to them during this century-long conflict. At every possible junction that they could, they said no.
But this new younger group stands up and says they are saying yes and they're not being listened to.
It's very difficult to find out what they say.
They seem rather dismissive of the statements of the moderates. Why is that?
Because if the Arab moderates carry weight, then it puts the extremists in Israel in a very difficult position. There has been a malignant mechanism in this conflict, as extremists from both sides reinforced each other. The best argumentation for the Likud were extreme positions coming from the PLO and vice versa. And now when there are moderate positions, then puts the Likud in a difficult position, because then the question of security, if the Arabs are willing to make a settlement, then why not?
I feel to believe in your right
as a Palestinian here, to believe in achieving peace and justice in the Middle East, you are a threat to the Israelis. The harassment will remain here. Being arrested, it might happen anytime. And the only thing which will stop this kind of action is to have real peace in the Middle East, where we'll have our own state, and the Israelis will have their own state. And then we will not threaten them, they will not threaten us.
From the uprising has come a new concept of how the Palestinian state could emerge, ironically similar to how Israel itself was created in 1948.
The basic premise was that the only way you get a state is through the prior permission of the Israelis. And I said, if we take a look at how Israel formed its state, following the 1947 partition resolution, Israel unilaterally declared the existence of Israel. It got immediately international recognition. And then when its existence was challenged by Arab armies in the 48 war, it secured effective control of the territories. And my belief is that the Palestinians can do something quite analogous. They can declare the state unilaterally, they can get international recognition, and they can gain effective control of the territories. The big difference is that they cannot do it militarily. What they have to do is basically launch a very sophisticated political, economic, moral, and psychological strategy for bringing that about.
They're obsessed by security. Security for peace. But if there is justice, security will fall in step. I mean, there'll be no problem. Once there is justice, it'll be for all. We both will gain. And there's no problem. We're not asking anymore for a secular democratic state because it has come to a situation where this is proved to everybody it's impossible. So we have two separate states. If they insist on a Jewish state, let them have a Jewish state. We'll have our secular state. And the Jews want to live in the secular state, ahlan sahla. They're welcome to it.
It seems to me that it's no good to indulge in delusions. We cannot. It was a nice dream to have all Palestine as a Jewish state. It's impossible. And therefore, we have to see what is possible. When I speak to Israelis, they start asking me, what kind of Israel do you want? I said, very big. How big? I said, from Paris to New Delhi. They said, that is impossible. I say, fine, so let us start and see what is possible. And the fact that there are Palestinians in our neighborhood, and the Palestinians consider themselves as human beings who deserve to have a political expression to their entity. Therefore, they want to resign themselves that only the Jews deserve to have a state and they may have only autonomy under Israeli tutelage. It's impossible.
Well, to my mind, there is only one solution. The Palestinian territories of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip, should be recognized as the homeland of the Palestinian people. They should be allowed to exercise self-determination and establish their own Palestinian state in these territories if they so desire, and I believe that this is what they really wish to do. And I think that such a solution, when it comes, or if it will come after direct negotiation between the Israeli government and the PLO, will probably bring an end, I would say almost certainly will bring an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this is the only way out of this continuous confrontation between us and the Palestinians, which is now 20 years old, 21 years old.
Gaza.